Imagine sitting down to dinner with your closest friends, like the people you trust most in the world.
Oh, yeah. Your safest space.
Right, exactly. You're breaking bread, sharing stories, you're completely at ease. And then out of nowhere, someone hands you an urgent, handwritten letter.
Okay.
And it's not a friendly greeting, it's a warning. It's telling you that someone sitting at that very table eating your food is secretly rewriting the rules of your community to tear it apart from the inside.
Man, that is a terrifying scenario.
Right. You thought you were in a safe harbor, but you were actually sitting on an active battlefield.
It completely shatters your sense of reality. Like you suddenly realize the ground beneath you isn't solid at all.
And that human craving for safety and truth, especially in the middle of absolute historical turbulence, is exactly what we are diving into today.
Yeah, because that dinner table scenario, that is essentially how the book of Jude opens.
It is. And today we have a really fascinating theological study guide on the table, authored by Frank Leo. And what this deep dive does, which is so cool, is it takes two completely different biblical texts, and I mean, they couldn't be more different, and puts them side by side to uncover this massive, overarching master theme.
The contrast he draws is just brilliant. On one side, you have the book of Jude, which reads like an intense, urgent battle manual. It's written during a total crisis of truth.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, you have Ruth chapter 4, which is basically a quiet, almost romantic legal drama playing out at a small town city gate. And that one is set during a crisis of survival and famine.
A battle manual and a legal drama. But by mapping the narrative arc across both of these texts, we get to see exactly how God preserves and redeems his people through extreme turbulence.
Exactly.
Whether that turbulence is a heresy threatening to destroy everything from the inside out, or just the brutal reality of grief and loss. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, we should probably start with the louder of the two texts, which is Jude.
Yeah, let's do it.
We are dropping straight onto the front lines of early church spiritual warfare here. And Jude actually starts his letter by calling himself a servant, or actually, more accurately in the original language, a slave of Jesus Christ.
Which is a huge detail, right? Considering he was traditionally understood to be the biological brother of Jesus.
Right. He doesn't pull rank. He doesn't rely on his family connections at all.
That humility really sets the stage for everything that follows, because Jude says he originally sat down to write this comforting, joyful letter about the salvation they all shared.
Yeah, a nice pastoral letter.
Exactly, but he couldn't. He says the Holy Spirit compelled him to just drop the pleasantries and write a battle command. The threat level had completely changed.
And so he tells believers they need to contend for the faith that was delivered once and for all. And Frank Leo's study guide notes something really interesting about the Greek word used there for contend. It's epagonizestai.
Epagonizestai.
Wow. Yeah. And this isn't like a polite debate in a town square. That word implies an agonizing athletic struggle. I mean, it's the root of our English word agony.
Oh, wow.
You fight for this truth like a gladiator fighting for his life in an arena.
Okay, so Jude says they need to fight for the faith in this agonizing way. But who are they actually fighting? Like, is the Roman Empire kicking their doors down? Are they facing an invading army?
See, that's what you would expect when you hear words like battle and contend. But no, the threat is entirely an inside job.
An inside job?
Yeah, Jude warns about these false teachers who have sneaked in unnoticed. They've just slipped through the cracks of the community.
So they slipped through the cracks. What is the actual damage they're doing once they're inside?
Well, they are taking the grace of God and weaponizing it.
Weaponizing grace.
Yes. They are turning it into a license for absolute immorality. They are effectively telling people, because God's grace is infinite and he forgives everything, we can just do whatever we want.
Oh, I see.
And by doing that, they are completely denying God's sovereign authority over their life.
Wait, so they aren't attacking the church from the outside? They are taking the core message of the church, which is grace, and completely rewriting what it means.
Exactly.
It sounds almost like a stealth computer virus.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it. Tell me more about that.
Well, it's like they aren't launching a brute force attack on the hardware, right? They aren't trying to smash the servers with a hammer.
Right.
They are rewriting the operating system from the inside. They sneak in and alter the fundamental code of grace to mean unlimited permission to sin.
Yes.
And because it's cloaked as grace, it sneaks right past the antivirus software. No one realizes the system is corrupted until it just starts crashing.
That captures the sheer deception of it perfectly. It's a total corruption of the system from within. And the defining characteristic of this virus, according to Jude, is profound spiritual arrogance. Frank Leo's guide points out a fascinating, honestly almost bizarre reference Jude uses to illustrate this arrogance. He brings up Michael the Archangel.
Oh, man, yeah, I remember reading that and thinking, did I accidentally turn to a fantasy novel?
Right.
It's this super obscure argument over the body of Moses. Why bring an archangel into a letter about local church drama?
I know, it seems completely out of left field, but it's actually incredibly precise. Jude references an ancient Jewish tradition where Michael the Archangel is arguing with the devil over Moses' body.
Okay.
Now think about Michael. He is arguably the most powerful created angelic being, a warrior of the highest order. But even in this intense cosmic dispute with the devil, Michael does not dare to pronounce his own judgment.
He defers entirely to God's authority.
Exactly.
He just says, "The Lord rebuke you." He stays within his assigned lane, recognizing that even with all his celestial power, he isn't the ultimate judge.
He respects the divine chain of command. Now, contrast that ultimate angelic humility with these false teachers.
Yeah.
Jude says these mere mortals proudly blaspheme spiritual realities they don't even begin to understand.
Wow.
They have zero reverence. They abandon God's authority simply to serve their own physical appetites. It's the absolute height of spiritual arrogance.
So if these dangerous influencers are operating from the inside and they're cloaked in the beautiful language of grace, how do you actually spot them?
It's tricky.
Yeah, what are the symptoms of this virus? Because if I'm listening to this right now, I'm wondering how I protect my own community.
Well, Jude doesn't just yell fire and run away. He gives us a field guide. He maps out the anatomy of their rebellion using 3 historical examples of ruin.
Okay, what are they?
First, the way of Cain, which is self-righteous false worship, basically approaching God on your own terms, not his.
Right.
Second, the error of Balaam, which is the monetization of faith. Selling out your spiritual calling for sheer financial profit.
Oh, that's relevant.
Very. And third, the rebellion of Korah, which was a brazen public challenge to divine authority.
It's a terrifying progression when you lay it out like that. It starts quietly with self-righteousness, grows into greed, and then just erupts into full-blown rebellion against authority.
Exactly.
But the part of the study guide that really haunted me was the nature metaphors Jude uses to describe these people. Like, he calls them hidden reefs at communal love feasts.
Yeah, and we really need to contextualize what a love feast was in the early church to get that.
Right, it wasn't just a potluck.
No, this wasn't a quick cup of coffee after a service. These were shared meals, often the only substantial meal a poor believer might eat that entire week.
Wow.
They were times of profound vulnerability, fellowship, and absolute trust.
Which makes a hidden reef so malicious.
Yes.
Because a reef is dangerous precisely because it's submerged. You don't see it until it rips the bottom of your boat out. To have hidden reefs at a love feast means the danger is sitting right next to you at the table, eating your food, gaining your trust, while secretly preparing to wreck your faith.
It's chilling. And Jude follows that up by calling them waterless clouds. In an arid agricultural society where your very survival depends on rain, a cloud rolling in is a promise of life.
Yeah, you'd be so relieved.
But a waterless cloud is just a shadow. It promises relief but delivers drought. And then he calls them wandering stars.
Wandering star.
Navigators use stars to cross oceans because stars are fixed. They're reliable guides. But a wandering star like a meteor or a rogue planet, if you set your course by that, it leads you straight to doom.
Man, every single one of those metaphors, the hidden reefs, the waterless clouds, the wandering stars, points to the exact same core identifier, which is self-interest.
Right.
They look like they are offering spiritual nourishment or guidance, but they are entirely hollow. They are shepherds who only feed themselves.
They're all promise and zero delivery, operating purely for their own appetites.
It really makes you pause and evaluate the voices you listen to today. For you listening right now, consider the modern equivalents. Think about the influencers, the leaders, the voices in our culture who promise absolute spiritual nourishment, who claim they have the secret to your peace or your prosperity, but are essentially waterless clouds operating purely for profit and self-interest. It's a sobering reality check.
It really forces us to demand integrity, not just charisma, from the people we allow to speak into our lives.
So Jude shows us the terrifying consequences of people who use grace to serve only themselves.
Right.
But what happens when someone actually uses their power and resources to serve someone else at their own massive expense? That brings us to this incredibly tense Tuesday morning at a city gate in Bethlehem. We are pivoting to Ruth chapter 4.
And to appreciate the stakes here, we have to understand the brutal reality for a widow in the ancient Near East.
It was not easy.
Not at all. When Ruth and her mother-in-law Naomi lost their husbands, they didn't just lose their loved ones, they lost their entire social and economic safety net.
Because there were no government assistance programs back then.
Zero. Without a male protector or landowner in that culture, they were facing extreme poverty, exploitation, and very likely starvation. It's a literal crisis of sheer survival.
Enter the concept of the goal.
Yes. The Goel is the kinsman redeemer. Ancient Israel had this brilliant legal mechanism designed to keep vulnerable families from being wiped out.
How did it work?
A close, wealthy relative had the legal right and the moral duty to step in, buy back any land the forefamily had to sell, and in this specific case, marry the widow to continue the deceased husband's lineage.
So the scene opens at the city gate, which was the ancient hub of legal and public affairs. It's where the elders gathered to settle disputes.
Yeah, the ancient courthouse.
Exactly. And Boaz, a wealthy relative, meets an even closer relative at the gate. And the Hebrew text intentionally leaves this closer relative unnamed. It refers to him as Poloni Almoni, which translates to something like Mr. So-and-so.
It's a brilliant literary diss.
It really is.
The text just refuses to give him a legacy. So Boaz presents the situation to Mr. So-and-so. He has the first right of refusal to act as the Goel for Ruth and Naomi. And initially, he actually says yes to buying the land.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, but when Boaz adds that he also has to marry Ruth the Moabite, Mr. So-and-so immediately backs out. He explicitly says that redeeming the land and marrying Ruth might ruin his own inheritance.
Oh, wait, I need to stop you there. Why does buying land and marrying Ruth ruin his inheritance? Wouldn't acquiring more land make him wealthier?
You'd think so, right?
Yeah.
But here is the catch with the kinsman redeemer law, and this is where the economics get really tricky.
Okay.
If Mr. So-and-so buys the land, he has to spend his own hard-earned silver. But if he marries Ruth and they have a son, that first son is legally considered the heir of Ruth's dead husband.
Oh.
Meaning that plot of land goes into the child's name, not Mr. So-and-so's name.
Oh, wow. So he loses the cash and he doesn't even get to keep the land for his own family line. Financially speaking, it's a terrible return on investment.
It is an awful financial move. He does the math, and he realizes it requires genuine sacrifice. He chooses self-preservation over his redemptive duty.
So he just walks away.
Yep.
And to seal this legal transfer, they perform a very strange ancient custom. Mr. So-and-so literally takes off his sandal and hands it to Boaz.
Yeah, in that culture, planting your foot on a piece of land symbolized ownership and dominion.
Yeah.
Taking off the sandal meant legally relinquishing that right. He is visually demonstrating that he is stepping out of his responsibility.
Hold on, I'm looking at how Frank Leo maps this out, and it's kind of blowing my mind. If Mr. So-and-so is the one who legally should save Ruth, but he won't do it because it costs him too much, is he representing the law here? Like, the law has the right to redeem us, but it can't actually save us because of human weakness and self-interest.
That is exactly the profound theological insight at the center of this study guide. Mr. So-and-so is the perfect embodiment of the law. The law is technically the closest relative. It outlines exactly what should happen. But when faced with the actual cost of human redemption, the law is weak. It cannot and will not sacrifice itself to save you.
And that makes Boaz the embodiment of grace.
Yes. Boaz represents grace stepping in where the law fails.
Yeah.
Boaz knows the financial cost. He knows the social stigma of marrying a foreign Moabite widow, and he steps up anyway. Grace is willing and able to pay the cost.
The poetic irony of that is just staggering. Mr. So-and-so walked away because he wanted to protect his own name and his own inheritance, but because he refused to love sacrificially, his name was literally erased from history. He's just Mr. So-and-so forever.
Forever unnamed.
Yeah. But Boaz risked his name, sacrificed his own wealth out of loyal love, and he became immortalized.
He became immortalized in a very literal way. This brings us to how these two wildly different texts, Jude's intense battle against heresy and Ruth's quiet, legal marriage dispute, weave into a single tapestry of divine protection.
Yeah, how do they connect at the end?
Well, in Ruth, Boaz marries her, and they have a son named Obed. The local women bless Naomi, and they tell her that Ruth, who came to them as a marginalized foreign outsider, is better to you than 7 sons.
Wow.
And in the ancient Near East, 7 sons was the ultimate symbol of perfect blessing and security. And this foreign widow is declared better than that perfect ideal. God took their famine and turned it into overwhelming abundance.
And then the book of Ruth ends with what the Hebrew calls the Peledat, right? The genealogy.
Exactly.
I've always wondered about that because you have this beautiful romance, this dramatic legal resolution, a baby is born, and then the book just ends with a list of names. Why is a family tree the climax of the story?
Because it reveals the sheer scale of what God was orchestrating behind the scenes. That Toledot lists 10 generations from Perez to King David.
Oh, wow.
It places this marginalized foreign widow directly into the royal lineage of Israel. And if you trace that line forward in the New Testament, it leads directly to the Messiah, Jesus Christ.
That's incredible.
Through one man's simple, costly act of grace at a city gate, God was preserving the lineage that would eventually bring salvation to the entire world.
Okay, now let's bridge that back to Jude. Jude is writing a survival guide for a church being ripped apart by arrogant, false teachers. It's dark, it's intense. But he finishes his letter with one of the most famous doxologies or praises in the entire Bible.
Yes, he does.
He praises the God who is able to keep you from stumbling and to present you before his glorious presence without fault and with great joy.
While Jude is screaming at them to fight for the truth, he ends by reminding them that they aren't holding themselves up. God is the one preserving them. God is the one keeping them from stumbling.
And Boaz is the living, breathing prototype of that exact divine grace.
You see the contrast perfectly. The false teachers in Jude represent the ultimate failure of humanity. They abandon God's authority and exploit others for selfish gain.
Right. They're the virus.
Yeah, they're the spiritual version of Mr. So-and-so, abandoning duty for self-preservation. But Boaz models divine grace. He sacrifices his own interests out of loyal love to preserve the broken.
Both of these texts, a battle manual and a legal drama, prove one massive point. God's plan moves forward despite human rebellion.
Absolutely.
Despite heresy, despite hidden reefs, despite historical tragedy and famine, God's protection is an active redemptive force. Whether he is challenging the spiritual arrogance of false teachers or using a humble redeemer in Bethlehem to rescue a grieving widow, God is always orchestrating the rescue.
The theological themes of divine preservation and redemptive duty are just woven so tightly through both of these books. We've seen the absolute depths of human selfishness and the towering heights of divine grace.
So what does this all mean? We've covered incredible ground today. We contrasted the intense spiritual warfare against heretics with the restorative grace of a kinsman redeemer. But what does it mean for you?
That's the real question.
Right. It means that whether you are actively fighting deception in your worldview right now, maybe you're having to take a hard stand for truth in your workplace or your family, or maybe you are just feeling empty, sitting in the ashes of a personal famine, hoping for restoration, the same God of grace is at work. The same God who judges the arrogant preserves the broken.
That assurance is the solid floor beneath us when everything else is spinning out of control.
I want to leave you with one final thought, going back to that Hebrew concept of Toledot the generations mentioned at the end of Ruth. History isn't just a random, chaotic sequence of events.
No, it's not.
When Boaz woke up that day, he had no idea he was participating in cosmic history. He thought he was just doing the right thing for one vulnerable widow on a Tuesday morning at the city gate. He was just being faithful in the small, costly things. But in reality, he was writing the genealogy of the ultimate king.
It gives you chills.
So think about your own life today. What small, seemingly insignificant choice of integrity or sacrifice are you making right now? Because that choice might be the exact mechanism God uses to write the next chapter of your family's history, or even to preserve someone else's faith. When the moment comes, will you be a Mr. So-and-so protecting your own interests, or will you be a Boaz?
That's the challenge.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us. We'll catch you next time.